we go into, we tell the people, lock the door, leave the place. It isn't even worth it for an exorcist to go in there.
Good evening, everyone. Once again for the Warren Files. Tonight we're going to talk about ghost stories with Layla, Bill, Chris, and Father Ken. But Chris wanted to start it out with a definition of what is a ghost, right? Isn't that what you asked?
Well, pretty much. Why do people become ghosts? Ghosts are just people too. I mean, they're people who've died and they have continued on, but there's a lot of reasons why they might do that. And anyway, happy holidays, everyone.
Happy
Santa
holidays.
Chris. Santa Chris and St. Jeff.
Anyway, so let's talk about that a little bit. There's many reasons for a person to become a ghost, as there are people. I mean, we all have our own reasons for why we do what we do, but there are certain basics. Tragedy can create the ghost phenomena. People can be stuck in a moment and relive it over and over again, that moment when they've died or what have you. They're just literally reliving it over and over again. They can't let go. There are those, of course, who have unfinished business, and will have plenty of ghost stories, which will illustrate all of these different points, by the way. But people who have a message they need to get across, something important that they need to say before they can rest easily. There are those who stay on to protect those they love or a place they loved, someplace they're particularly attached to. There are those who are terrified to pass over because they maybe done something that makes them think they're going to go to hell. I personally, sorry, Father Ken, I personally believe that nobody goes to hell, that we create our own hell.
You know, I believe the same thing. We're on the same page, because I believe in my studies throughout the years and studying theology and different religions around the world. You know, that's my basis. I think hell is what we make of it. I think it's our own hell. I think it's a place where we, like a purgatory, so to speak. And I kind of compare those, on the same parallel. To me, purgatory is a version of your own hell, of, the mistakes you've made, of the things that you've wanted to get done, the depression, the grief, the anxiety, the guilt, most importantly, which is, I think, a common phenomenon that we experience, within our field. We have ghosts that are suffering because they feel guilt because of what they've learned in their life. So I'm in alliance with you.
Yeah. A lot of people...
I was going to say, I was actually raised too that, and I don't believe this anymore, but I was raised to believe that ghosts were demons.
Yeah, same here.
Your grandparents, it was really a demon mimicking your deceased grandma or something like that. So that's how I was raised, and thought that for a long, long, long time.
That's very common.
There are a lot of Christian sects that do that.
That's very common amongst the Abrahamic belief systems. Yep. And a lot of it is based on hermeneutics, which hermeneutics is biblical interpretation, which is what I specialize in. And what I can tell you, what I've learned, a lot of it is absolutely irrelevant, and it's theory, so to speak. But with theory, there comes the practical application that you have to apply. And from my experience, from my interpretation, they got it all wrong. And I think that's why there's so much hurt amongst the Abrahamic belief systems, Christianity, Judaism, Catholicism. But what do I know, right? I'm not a doctor or anything like that.
I have a good friend that says to me all the time I'm crazy because there is no such thing as ghosts. It's all demons. And he always says that, and it's Satan and demons. And, he's stuck on that, there's no way you're gonna take him off of that.
Probably a good Southern Baptist, right?
Yeah.
No. Christian.
Okay.
Non-denominational, probably.
My
Probably
mom-
non-denominational.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
My mom's Catholic, and I get the same thing. She says that I'm going to go to hell for what I do, and that's
Well, I'm
just-
Catholic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Catholic, and I used to get that too.
Yeah.
My mother actually doesn't believe in ghosts at all.
Yeah, but you believe in God and the devil.
Right.
But you don't believe in ghosts.
that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
When we talk about biblical scripture, it talks about when Jesus came back and Jesus told Mary, I'm not a ghost. I am who I am. So right there is biblical confirmation that there are spirits. And I know we maybe have gotten a little bit off topic, but I also like to distinguish between ghosts and spirits. I think spirits are just residual energy that are just stuck in a time lapse and they're just repeating time. I don't think they're intelligent. I think it's just a moment and they're stuck in that dimension, that plane, that form of vibration, and we can't contact them. They can't contact us, but we can see them. That's my interpretation of a spirit as opposed to what a ghost is.
How would that differ from a residual haunting, or is that what you're talking about? It's not a spirit at all. It's not an entity. It's not a soul.
I would
Is
say
that
more
what
like
you mean?
I would say more it's like a memory in time. Like I think spirits, like a residual haunting, so to speak, are spirits that are stuck in time. And I don't know that we can communicate with them as opposed to what a ghost is. A ghost might be intelligent.
Is it like
But
Vader or VHS?
But I've had different experiences. So, I really don't know. I couldn't tell you. I think it's all up to our personal interpretation and what we believe in our heart to be true. But that's why we're on this show. And that's why we work with one another, because there's always a learning process.
See, for me, a residual haunting, there is no ghost or spirit of any sort.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, for me, I guess the only difference between a ghost and a spirit, for me, would be that a spirit isn't necessarily a soul that has lived in a body before. If you want to go there, so that can be what others call elementals and all sorts of things. But a residual haunting for me is only an impression left on a place.
Yes, that's
It's a
what I was trying to convey.
It's energy and light,
Yes.
It's almost like a video.
and there's no
phone on a loop.
intelligence at all.
It's like a time loop, right? Like a
Yeah,
time
yeah,
loop. Or
yeah.
like the old show on Travel Channel, it's a ghost loop.
yeah.
Like Don Collins here is saying.
Yes.
It's,
Thank you.
Science
I'm
has
only on my
actually
third cup of
proved
coffee.
too. Science has proved too that certain elements like certain stones and things like that can actually store energy and it does release it every once in a while. So that's
The stone tape theory.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I say we jump into some ghost stories because I think that's what people came on to watch.
All right.
Yes, and I think ladies first. Layla?
I'm going to go with the old childhood ghost story, which it started with the Ouija board that we were gifted as children. Like it was a toy. I don't know. We got it from my grandparents, my brother and I, and my brother is actually the one that messed with it more. And whatever he did, we just started having stuff happen at my house. I didn't really understand it. I remember little things happening at first. Like I would be getting ready to be by myself at the house. We had the old school radios, with the dials and everything on it. And I remember I was getting ready and I heard the radio turn up and down, up and down. So I walk over to see what's going on. And I literally watched the knob go up and then down, up and down. When I was a kid, it scared me. So I ran out of the house. And then another time I'm getting ready and I hear my friend come in the door. I'd been waiting for her and I hear her just come in and, we always would joke around with each other and she'd be like, "Hey bitch, hurry up. We're ready to go." And I go out to say something smart back to her. There's nobody there. But it was her exact voice, which, now I know it's more like a doppelganger, but, it's crazy. To this day, I still get that. I still get it at my house. Sometimes my daughter will come go, "Mom, what'd you need?" I say, "I didn't need anything." She's like, "But I just heard you in my room," or I hear her talking to me. So that's one thing that stayed with me. My friends would come over to spend the night and my brother wouldn't be there. They refused to go to his room. They would just feel like someone was watching them. And since my brother is the one that messed with it more, he would get the worst activity. So if we weren't there, he would hear banging on the walls. He said it would sound like someone's trying to come in and get him. And, you know, it never stopped until we got rid of that. And after we moved out, like I said, my mom doesn't really believe in any of that. She got the house blessed and the activity stopped. But that's how my first experience into the paranormal was.
Did things happen to your
So,
mom?
for those who don't know, what is a doppelganger?
So a doppelganger is either through a voice, so you hear someone and it mimics the exact voice of someone you know, or, and the more extreme is if you actually see someone. You see someone you think is your family member, your friend, or even yourself. People have seen themselves in a different room, and it's not them. It's what we call a doppelganger.
Do you know, is there any truth to this is probably just like a spooky story, but like if you see your own doppelganger, that means you're going to die?
I've heard that.
Okay.
I've heard that, but I don't.
I've heard that.
It's not true.
Oh, come on. It sounds like
I know people who've seen their own doppelganger and they're still here, so
Well, there you
it's
go.
not true.
Joe?
I thought we were telling
And
spooky
yes,
stories.
I've actually dreamed of myself dying, and I didn't die when I woke up. So I think that particular superstition is also fake.
How do you know that you didn't? We could all be dead. This could be a ghost show.
You know, it's funny because I've actually thought about that. I go, what if we're really just all dead, living our life, thinking we're alive, but we're actually dead?
It's
And
that
then all of
movie,
a
The
sudden
Others.
And then we wake up, and all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I really am a millionaire. I was living a cruddy. I was living.
I would be so mad that I'm still going to work every day.
I was like, wow, I really am a millionaire. I'm living I love what I do now, but I go, oh, okay, maybe.
Someone better
I
let me know.
think you just slipped into the matrix.
Right? Lost in
Exactly.
time.
Yeah, like Don says, the show Lost.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bill, you said
So,
you got some ghost stories. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bill. Yeah.
Well, I have a few, but I'm trying to think of which one. I'm gonna save that other one first. The first one I'm gonna say is actually something that I had. So this was back when I was in high school, and people didn't really talk too much about this stuff, but a couple friends of mine knew I was into it, and one of my friends said, "I got to take you to my aunt's house one of these days because something happened, and I just want you to see this." And all I know is she told me on the way that her cousin had a boyfriend. She was young. I think she was 16. Had a boyfriend, and he recently got killed on a car accident on the way home from work. And she was like devastated. And they said that she's been acting really strange lately. So that's all I knew. I got to the house, and they didn't even know we were coming. Her aunt was there, and she said, she was telling her that she was telling me about everything, and she wanted to show me some pictures. And they took out the pictures from after the funeral. Everybody came back to their house, and they were all hanging out at the house. And we were in the living room where they were taking all the pictures. They were sitting on a couch, and there was a big picture behind everybody. It was like a picture of like a lake or something like that. Just a big, like a painting. And she goes, "I want you to look at all these photos." And every photo that was taken, you can see the picture clear as day in there. But whenever the cousin, the one that was the boyfriend, the girlfriend, whenever she was in the photo with somebody, it was like a blank picture, and it was like black and white kind of. And I said, yeah, that's kind of strange. And then she showed me pictures of the guy, and in every picture he was wearing a white tank top. And when you look at the pictures, it's an outline of like a white tank top. It has the shading, and then it has the white. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then they said, see if she's in the room, take a look and see if you could go see her. Now, nobody was setting anything up back then because they didn't even know we were coming over there, I look in the room, the door was like cracked open. I could hear her talking to somebody, and she was talking to nobody in that room. I saw through the door, and she's going, "Oh, stop playing around." And then right there on the wall where I was looking was the light switch. And I saw the switch flip and the lights go off. And she's like, "Stop, put the lights back on." And the light switch went back on. And then she was telling him to come over here, come and talk to me. And you saw the bed dip right next to her, like somebody was sitting on it. Now, this is back when I was, I think, 17. So it definitely kind of freaked me out a little bit. But that was like my first experience of really seeing something like that. I mean, that bed dipped down like somebody was sitting in the bed right next to her.
Wow.
She never knew I was there. I walked away and I said, all right, let's go. That was enough for the day at the time.
So,
But it was crazy. They said, I don't know what happened, but I know that they were taking her to therapy and stuff because they didn't know they thought she was crazy at the time, but I was telling them, I said, no, that bed moved. Something was there, and they were looking at me like I was a little crazy, but I know they were getting her some help and everything, but there was somebody in that room. I don't know if it was him or if it was somebody pretending to be him or something, but there was something in that room. And that was one of my first experiences of seeing something with my eyes.
wow. Yeah, that's creepy. That is for sure creepy.
Yeah.
Chris, you probably have a million ghost stories.
Yeah.
But Joe Frankie has 1,000,001. So, I mean, he's got you.
Yeah, million one.
I've never seen anybody have a man crush so hard as you do, Jeff.
I mean, it says back there somewhere, I love
You
Joe
still have
Frankie.
that back there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, where'd it go?
Keyword hard. Come on, man.
No, we're gonna end this live until the sign is found. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm going to defer to our spiritual head first. And Father Ken, what do you got to share with us?
So, I've got a couple of stories, but I'd like to share one that is deep and personal to me. It's actually the pivoting point of why I got involved into the paranormal. Growing up, my grandmother was a high priestess in Santeria, which is an Afro-Caribbean practice based in Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. So I experienced a lot of things, but this one in particular, my dad and my stepmom and I, my little sister, we moved to a house in Paterson, New Jersey. And this house, seemed like a regular, normal house. It was divided 2 different floors. So we had neighbors downstairs and neighbors upstairs. And so my first experience was I was with my dad and my little sister. We were outside playing with my sister on her bike, and my dad and I were tossing the ball around. And we look up and we see a little girl looking out the window. And we're like, oh, that's pretty weird. And my dad was like, is that one of your sister's friends? And I go, I don't think so. So I followed my dad upstairs to the house, inside the house. We were looking for this young girl. We didn't see anything. And as he was going up the stairs, some overwhelming force just knocked him back. And he hit his head. And he actually ended up getting a heart attack at that time. So we had to rush him to the hospital. And so my dad was in the hospital for about a week. Couldn't figure out what was going on. Maybe he slipped. We don't know. A few days later, my little sister was complaining of a little girl coming out from under the bed in a purple dress, teaching her bad words, teaching her how to curse. More importantly, teaching her how to kill our family and slit our throats. She was only 4 years old. She would tell us in detail what this girl in a purple dress would do and say to her, and she would wake up really scared, and she would wake up with these unknown scratch marks. At the time, my family was like, well, maybe she's just having a bad dream and she's probably scratching herself. She's a young kid at that age, So a couple of things happened. There was one day that my little sister, my dad, and I were watching television. We were watching a movie. As a matter of fact, we were watching Stephen King's It, the original with Tim Curry. And we were sitting in the living room, and across the living room, you can see the kitchen. And so we are watching this movie, and we see my little sister walk across the kitchen. And we're like, hey, sis, come back here. And she goes, wait, I'm already here. So we saw her doppelganger walk across the kitchen, but she was sitting on the floor. When my dad was walking to the kitchen, he heard a loud crash. And so when he looked, we had a candle of Jesus Christ and a crucifix standing on the kitchen mantle. Some force took the candle, stuck it upside down inside the candle, and shattered the candle. Couldn't explain that. There were times when there were people, we would hear footsteps upstairs, and there was no one upstairs. Even to the point we thought we had neighbors downstairs. And so my stepmother and my dad would call the landlord and say, hey, why are the neighbors having a party? They're so loud. They're making so much noise. The neighbor was like, nobody's lived downstairs in over 7 months. You guys are the only tenants in this building. And so, some of the activity ended up happening. We kept on seeing this little girl. One day, our dog ended up missing. And he ended up missing, and we tried looking for him for several weeks. We went to the dog pound, we went to the animal shelter to see if we can find him. But the weird thing is that he was locked inside the apartment. And as when we approached, everything in the house was locked. The back door, even the back door leading to the downstairs yard, was locked, and nothing. My sister was still complaining that this young girl was, still bothering her. Even one point, my dad alleges that my little sister woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. She had a knife in her hand and she lunged at him. Her eyes were all white. So we're like, okay, this is something's got to give. We've got to do something about it. So we spoke to the priest. There was a small little chapel across the street from our home, and the priest had mentioned that we were the 6th or 7th tenants that have lived there within 2 years. No one seems to stay in the second floor. And so throughout all that, we had him come over, and he came to bless the house. But as he was going up the stairs, he felt really, really ill, and he started nausea. He got really nauseous, and he threw up, and he actually fainted. He was like, "Yeah, I'm done for the day." And so throughout all this happening, a few days later, my dad and I, I was going to help him set up the barbecue grill. We're like, what we're doing, we're experiencing quite a bit of different things. So maybe a barbecue, in the backyard would help. I remember when I was with my dad, we went to go get the barbecue. We found our dog. He was crucified and gutted open downstairs in the backyard with his innards out. And so we knew that there was something more sinister going on. And so when we got the priest to come back again a few weeks later, we had my grandmother also. We all prayed for the house. We blessed it, everything. There was a loud scream, and the environment just got really lighter. And several weeks passed by. There was no activity. About 6 months later, when we were moving out of that place, my dad found a little door in the attic, in the closet, and there was a little cubby hole. And inside that cubby hole, there was a little box. And I was with him, and in that box, there were pictures of naked children and dirty used underwear. So we contacted police, and the landlord alleges that the tenants who lived downstairs, were really into some really dark stuff. They were sacrificing animals. They were into allegedly satanic stuff, satanic, not part of the Church of Satan, but actual satanic stuff with the sigils that they had to get painted over. And so once we did that blessing and we moved, that was the culmination of knowing that there was something out there that I couldn't explain. And that is my ghost story.
I'm going to be honest.
Well, let's be clear to others. Whatever that was certainly
not a ghost. Certainly was not a ghost. And I don't want to use the word because I've strongly refrained from using, the other word, just because it's often far too
negative
used.
entity.
It's a negative energy. Power. It's a negative energy with tremendous power. But we chose not to give it any power. We chose not to give it any authority. And yeah, that is my supernatural story, so to speak.
Well,
that's horrifying. I'm so sorry about your dog.
Yes, me too.
His name was Zuki. He was the Japanese Akita. He was the bestest boy ever. One of the goodest boys. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And that's why I do what I do. Because that changed me. Amongst seeing, it's one thing to see a shadow figure. It's one thing to see other things. But even with me, I suffered a really traumatic life. My mother was never anyway, different story. But, because of what I experienced, I think I was more prone to see a lot of these different energies. I've seen ghosts. I've seen shadow spirits. I do remember there was a time when I was watching a movie with my dad and we went to bed. And when I went to bed, the same, remember Legend? Remember Legend with Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
So the original, that devil guy. So I had a dream that thing pulled me under the bed, and come to find out, my dad and I, we actually were fighting. Something was pulling me under the bed. And when I woke up, there were 3 scratch marks. Could have been a psychoactive imagination. I could have fell over under the bed and got scared, and who knows? But I mean, that's my experience. Yeah.
How old were you when the thing happened at the apartment?
I was about 11 or 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was heavy into church. I was in youth ministry. I was already at that age in deliverance ministry. but a lot of it was pretty intense. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
to experience that at a young age,
Yeah.
once again, and it's not just something that I experienced. Like, I can get my whole family on live right now, and they can attest to everything. And my little sister, she doesn't remember anything that happened, and we won't even bring it up.
Yeah.
That's good though.
Yeah.
That's a blessing.
Yeah.
Jeff, not to put you on the spot because you usually aren't contributing all that much, but what do you got to share with us?
So I've actually got a couple. I'll tell a quick one because I'm sure some people that are tuned in want to see what Chris McKinnell has to say.
Oh, for goodness sake, you got 2 hours. Just take your time.
No, this one, like, I don't get scared very easy or very often, but this one actually really scared me. We were getting ready to do an investigation, and I had to go borrow some equipment from a mentor of mine, a good friend. And I've got a key to his house, and he said, "Yeah, we're not there. Just go over and grab what you need, and be on your way." So I go over there and I unlocked the door, and I walked in the door, and I saw a person run through the kitchen. So you could see down the hallway into the kitchen, and the person just straight up ran across the hallway through the kitchen and into the living room. And at the exact same time, someone ran the entire length of the hallway upstairs. Like, it was heavy footsteps. That house felt so, like, when you're around one of those energy balls and you can feel that electric static, that house was charged. Like, I've never felt that before in my life, that intense. So I stood there for a couple minutes. I'm thinking, oh my God, somebody's robbing him. And I just walked in on it, So I finally got the courage to go out into the living room, and, I'm kind of peeking around and, like, halfway to, fight somebody, and nobody was there, of course. But I mean, and then I thought, well, maybe they got out the garage because that would have gone out that way. So then I have to go upstairs because there is no way to get out upstairs. So I go up there, and obviously I'm creeping up the steps. I get up to the hallway at the top of the stairs, and I'm looking around, and, absolutely no one up there. But those were the heaviest footsteps I've ever seen or heard in my life. And then seeing the other figure, in the kitchen at the same time. And this house is, he's a paranormal investigator as well, and he collects a lot of haunted objects. So this house gets hot from time to time, like it really fires up. But I ran in that office, grabbed what I needed, and got the hell out of there. I was so scared. So that's one of my ghost stories for the evening. Because like I said, that was a short one. Sorry, my cables are all tangled up. But I really think people tune in to see, they want to hear the Satan's Harvest story or something.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I mean, they want to hear the grandson of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
but maybe something that no one else has heard ever before.
The expert.
Guys,
The boss man. Get all the insults out at
swear
once.
to God, next time I see you, man.
Oh, jeez.
Anyway, I'm just going to point out that everyone I've ever met has grandparents. It doesn't make me special.
Oh, quite contrary.
Your experiences make it special.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I've got a few. And I'm going to try and tell some that I haven't told before. One that is kind of sad and heartbreaking. I was in Mexico a little over a year ago, and I was brought to this restaurant. The family that owned the restaurant was having phenomena, and they wanted us to check it out. So, of course, when I go into places like this, I can't know anything at all. Because if I'm going to use my abilities, I can't have my perceptions colored by pre-existing knowledge. So we walked around, and I could tell, that on the stairs someone had died. They'd killed themselves. I had a strong sense that it was a woman. And then I came to understand that this was someone who had been a servant when this had been a house, a hacienda. And They were using equipment. Now, I'm not a fan of equipment, but I do like it when the equipment backs up what I'm coming up with. So that's kind of nice. And the messages that were coming through confirmed what I felt, that she had gotten pregnant and that she was being abused by the master of the house. And she had committed suicide by throwing herself off the stairs and killing herself. We tried to help her, and I was trying to make contact with her, and it became very, very, very clear that she wanted nothing to do with men. Luckily, I was there with a team of women who work in Mexico, and they were able to help this young lady to pass over successfully. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that often will happen. There's another one. One of my more recent experiences. I was in New Zealand about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago now. It was right after my father had died, and that night we had done a presentation. I do lectures, and I was there doing a lecture, and this was in a school that was haunted. There had been a boiler room explosion, and a custodian had died, and I could tell he was there. I didn't know anything about this beforehand, but once I mentioned it to the person who worked in the place, he confirmed that, yeah, that's exactly what had happened. But when we went back to my friend's place, and I was staying in her family's home, it was like 2:00 in the morning, and we were finally settling down, and I was in the guest bedroom, and for about 5 minutes, I'm hearing this noise, like, I'm like, what the hell is that? And at first, it didn't even register. I was tired, but I realized it was the door vibrating. So I walked over to it, and I opened the door. And my friend, who's a member of the foundation as well, was out in the hallway, and she turns around and she's looking at me like, "What the hell are you doing in that room?" It's like, I said, "Wait a minute, let me try something." And I closed the door again, and it starts vibrating again. And I just said, "All right, enough of that. Cut it out now." It immediately stopped. Immediately. So we were thinking probably something followed us home. And about 3 or 4 minutes later, my friend had gone back to bed with her husband, and I got back in bed. And I said, "Dad, if that was you, go ahead and vibrate the door again." 2 or 3 minutes later, it started vibrating again. But I got the sense, no, it wasn't my father, because it took a little extra time. And I said, "All right, cut it out. Enough of that for tonight." And then the spirit, whatever this spirit was, went down the hallway to my friend Kim's and her husband, and it started knocking over things in the bathroom and making noise in the closet. And she and her husband were like, her husband was like, "There's something in the room with us again, isn't there?" She's like, "Yeah, there is." And she had also said, "All right, enough of that. Stop it. I'm trying to sleep. Go away." About 20 minutes later, her little 4-year-old came in saying that there was somebody in the room bothering her, and she was afraid. And so again, bring the little girl back to her room, make sure everything's okay. And about 45 minutes later, another one of our members of the foundation, who was staying in another guest room, started having a panic attack because she could feel that there was a spirit in the room with her, and she couldn't understand what was going on. Now we did, everything to cleanse the energy, and everything was fine afterward. But that was an interesting one.
Did you ever figure out who it was or what it was?
No. I'm sure it wasn't my father, but I don't know for sure who it was.
Can I ask you a related question?
Of
So
course.
you said this was just after a lecture, and you had felt, and then it was confirmed later that a janitor had passed away there.
Yes.
Do you ever have the, like, let's say you're the first person maybe that's walked in there in a while that actually knows he's there, so maybe he followed you home? Have you ever had that happen or anything similar to
It is rare, but I had a case in. Well, you're going to hear me bopping around the world in these stories. I'm like, so I was in San Jose, Costa Rica, and
Toledo, Ohio, so preach on.
that's spooky by itself. I lived in Ohio, but I was in San Jose, and the team that is a member they're members of the foundation as well. They brought us to a haunted sanitarium, it had been for tuberculosis patients originally. And I had made contact with a baby, a child, a young child. And that morning before I went to the sanitarium, I had asked my grandparents to be there to help me if anything happened, and to help any spirits that might be there. And I had gotten away from the paparazzi who were following me all around this thing, and I managed for a few minutes just to be by myself in a room, and this little child came up to me, a ghost, and the child was very afraid and didn't want to cross over. And I was speaking to the child in Spanish, trying to convince this spirit that their family was waiting for them and they could pass over. And the child was too afraid. And all of a sudden, I noticed that my grandfather is right there next to me on my right-hand side. And he's kind of like, no. Chris, what are you doing? Okay. But then my grandmother comes off from the left-hand side and gets down on one knee with this child and takes the child by the hand, and they go into the light. Now, the interesting thing is that night, it was about 2:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden my TV turned on by itself. And I was like, go away. I'm too tired. These things just don't scare me. I don't even think about it. But it was playing music on a YouTube by itself. It just switched to a Spanish song. And then I was like, okay. So I turned it off. And a couple of hours later, I decided, I don't have Spanish music on my YouTube. So what the hell was that? And I got into the history, and it wasn't there. There was no song there, and that's not normal. Now, was this part of the sanitarium? Honestly, I don't think so. But there were other things that happened in this apartment that make me think I brought something home from the sanitarium.
Yeah.
This particular one, I think, was because I had been asked to help a woman who was dying of cancer. And she was terrified. And I had finally found somebody to help me translate what I needed to say to her to help her. Because at that point, I didn't speak Spanish. And I had sent a message to her daughter, who had contacted me, saying I'd be happy to speak to her the next day. Well, it turned out she had actually died that evening. before the TV turned on by itself. The next morning, and I didn't know this, the next morning I turned on the TV, and again, YouTube is playing all by itself, which shouldn't be possible, playing another Spanish love song. And when I finally got a hold of the daughter told me what had happened, and I realized that these two Spanish love songs I was hearing were probably messages for her daughter, saying that she's okay. That, if the TV had turned on in her daughter's home, it would have terrified her, but because it was me, it's just a message to pass on. So it wasn't so bad. Having said that, then there was something above me, and it was running across the ceiling, making lots of noise. There's it's called a duende. This creature that exists in Costa Rica, this manifestation, this spirit, and it can be very mischievous, and it was just causing a ton of racket. The night before I left, I had unplugged the application on the back of the TV, got rid of the internet completely, and I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and all of a sudden I hear something fall in the kitchen, and then the TV turns on by itself, repeating the same video in a loop again and again and again. I was like, all right, we don't have internet on the television now. How is this thing looping in some YouTube video when we don't even have access to YouTube? I was like, just cut it out now. I unplugged the television, and that was the end of that particular apartment.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean,
so you've got a couple.
Can things carry you home or follow you home? Absolutely. I know plenty of people who have had that happen to them.
Yep.
When it happens to me, it's usually very benign. It's nothing dangerous. I've never had anything follow me from a ghost haunting that was bad. I've certainly had things attack me at home.
Yeah.
Several times, but that's not a ghost. Whatever that is something altogether different.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna say something real quick, and then I think we only got Bill for like 15 more minutes, and I think he's got another story or two. But I had the same thing happen recently too, where we did an investigation, and it really felt like there was a little girl that was being held captive, by a man. And I when I said this, because I tell everybody, don't ever invite anything to come home with you, because you don't know what it is. I said, if you're here, I want you to follow me home. As soon as I said it, it was in like slow motion, like, oh, you screwed up. And I truly believe it was a little girl, and we had activity for a couple of days, and then we sent her on and all that other stuff. But I mean, it was, bad advice to actually invite something to come home with you.
Yeah,
but it does happen, without, things do follow you home.
We had something like that happen to us a little bit over a month ago. We were doing a local investigation here in town for the foundation, and we went to go visit the home and everything. And I had two psychics with me. I didn't tell them anything about the case. I kept them separate. One went in, got their reading. The other came out. They got their reading. They, picked up on the same exact thing into the same exact location, and one of them fell ill. So anyway, we visited the family. We didn't capture much evidence. It was just more of a blessing and a cleansing. We figured that because of the area that they lived in, there was a lot of transient energy, and the people that lived upstairs were known to be drug dealers. So a lot of that was inadvertently focused on them. But, I always make a habit of, before we go in, we bless, we cleanse ourselves. And same thing here when we get out. When I get home, I take off my clothes, I put it in the washer, but I cleanse us before we get inside the house. And I don't remember whether or not I did that night. I'm pretty sure I did, but one of my psychics, she felt really, really ill, and she was nauseous, and she wanted to see the dogs. She saw two of my dogs, and as she approached them, a few minutes later, we got an alert on the camera. Both of my dogs ended up getting a seizure. Never has that happened. And my third dog, the one that's here with me right now, it seems like his enzymes got he has liver enzyme problems. So he started hiding under the bed. He started running back and forth. He was nervous, tail tucked in between his legs. We're like, no, we got to do something. So we went back outside. We did another cleansing and everything. 30 minutes later, my psychic felt better, and the dogs were fine. And so it's highly important that you protect yourself at all times, just like in boxing, right? Protect your face at all times.
Yeah,
Little things like that.
Too.
Yeah,
I've forgotten it at some points, but like I said, we only got Bill for a few more minutes,
Yeah.
I think. So, Bill, you said you had a couple more.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to do them quick. I got two that I got to tell. One is mine and one is somebody else's. But so I'm gonna tell you. I've talked about this sometimes on lectures I do and stuff. This was the first time I saw an actual ghost apparition, whatever you want to, call it. Again, I was in high school. It was my senior year, and I'm gonna give you the short version. Somebody I know, we were having a big party at their house that night because the hockey team that I used to coach our own high school hockey team. So we won the championships, and she let us have a party in her house. She has a really old house in the town. It's in Paramus, so it's right next to Patterson. And,
nice.
So this is an old house right across from the Bergen Community College there. And so now I'm going to say this, like I always say, I was not drinking that night. I was not smoking. I was not doing anything because I had to babysit some people. So at the end of the night, most people were gone, and I stayed there with the girl who lived there. Her family was away for the night. So we stayed there. There was like four of us. We went into the one room. Everybody crashed out in the room. They were all out because they were all drinking all night. I was up. I was watching TV. I got up to go to the bathroom. I came out, and it's a big house. There's a huge hallway, and the bathroom was literally at the end of the hallway. So I turned. I went to walk down the hallway. I had like my head down, and I looked up, and I was new to this. I was still learning about stuff and trying to see what was real, what wasn't. And I thought I was losing my mind. I was stuck in my spot. It was so detailed. It was ghost white. It was an old guy. He was wearing overalls. He had a kind of like a cowboy hat on, very detailed. And I didn't know if I was losing my mind or what it was. Somebody spiked my drink, and like I always say, it felt like it was about 20 minutes. It was probably like 30 seconds. But he looked at me, he kind of nodded, he turned, and he walked straight through the wall into the other room. And then about 10 minutes later, when I was able to move, I turned around and I wasn't scared at all. It was just, you're kind of stunned.
Yeah.
And I walked into the room and I woke up my friend who lived there. And I said, "Hey, are you sure there's nobody in the house? Your parents didn't come home early or something?" She's like, "No. What are you talking about?" I said, "You have like a grandfather, uncle, anybody else live in this house that could be here?" She's like, No. Did you see somebody?" I'm like, "Well, kind of." And she goes, "Was it the old guy in the overalls?" I almost fell down. I said, "What?" And she said, he's not going to bother you. And she proceeded to tell me stories for people who don't think that some of them are good.
Yeah.
Here's a story. So she started to tell me a story about they used to see this guy all the time and they got scared of him. One night the mother woke up and she was pulled out of the bed and he was standing over her and she was terrified. And then he disappeared. And when she heard a noise downstairs and she didn't know what it was, so she called the cops. She was totally freaked out.
Yeah.
She called the cops. The cops showed up. Somebody was breaking in the house downstairs. So it was like he pulled her out of the bed and woke her up to let her know somebody was breaking in the house. They said he's always protected them and never harmed anybody, never really, freaked anybody out except for the beginning when they first saw him. But it was a crazy confirmation to me because I never heard any of this. And when she said, "Was it the old guy wearing the overalls?" totally blew my mind at that point. I was like, I kind of looked at her like, were you in the hallway? What
Yeah, she
happened?
was like, duh, like everybody knows
Yeah.
who it is.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, I didn't over my 30-something years of doing this. I haven't seen a lot like that, but that was one that I'll never forget. But I'll quickly tell the other story because this one is crazy. I wish it was mine, but it's not. um, it was a friend of mine. His mother was telling me a story one time because I think I was telling this story. It was like a year or two later, and his mother was telling me a story that when they were young and they lived in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and every night he used to wake up when he was like 4 or 5 years old. I think it was something like that. He would wake up screaming at like 2. I think it was 2 a.m. every night, just screaming. And they didn't know what was wrong. They thought he was having night terrors. They checked him out, and he just every night hysterical screaming. Not like he woke up like with a nightmare. He just was screaming and going crazy. So they didn't know what to do. One night, now this is the northern Italians. So one night the grandmother was there, and she was up for some reason at 2 a.m. downstairs in the kitchen, and she said she saw a little girl walking from the kitchen out. So being the old school Italian, she followed her. She wasn't scared. She followed her, and she said she went up the stairs. She went in the hallway. She turned, went right through the door into his room. She opened the door. She climbed up onto the bed, and she disappeared right literally into him. And he woke up screaming and crying. And when they did some research, they found out that a lady who lived there years prior murdered her daughter in the bathtub, drowned her in the bathtub. And
Wow.
the time of death was 2 a.m.
Oh, that's crazy, man.
That's crazy. What's funny is he was sitting there, and I don't think he had ever heard the story.
Yeah.
He was a little freaked out.
Jeez. Yeah, this is definitely not the feel good show of the year. There's a lot of death and murder.
We got a good one here. Jonathan Deli. He says, Kenneth, where's my coffee? I want to give a shout out to Sir Chief Warrant Officer John Deli. He was actually my recruiter. He's the reason why I joined the Marine Corps back in 2004. He was my father figure when I had no one around. He believed in me. He motivated me. He knew that I had a rough life growing up, but Jonathan Deli, he's now a retired U.S. Marine Chief Warrant Officer. He's the reason why I'm in this field now. So thanks for tuning in, sir.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you. And you've turned it into the feel good show of the year. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and while we're giving shout outs, we also have another person on with us right now. His name's Rui Farinha, and he's in Portugal. And I was lucky enough to be with him and another one of our members in Portugal. The two of them are Umbandists. And at the time he was still learning, he wasn't yet a priest, but his lady was. And Umbanda is a fascinating religion because all of the priests and priestesses are mediums. And when you go to their temple, they have a set way of inviting the spirits in. And it's always going to be the same spirits. There are anywhere from 5 to 7 schools of spirits that these spirits come from. But each of the mediums, each of the priests is only channeling one particular spirit from each of these schools. It's one that they've developed a relationship with. And they will then counsel the people in that come to the services to help them with their spiritual problems. And they helped me. They helped us with cases, and they helped spiritually cleanse me. It was an amazing experience, and I feel very, very privileged. And Rui, it's wonderful to have you with us this evening. Thank you very much, my friend.
That's a beautiful thing, the fact that there are people out there doing this type of work, and a lot of people are like, well, Ken, you're a Catholic priest, but, I believe in all belief systems, and I believe that, we all have our own path, and the fact that there are people experienced out there and they're doing good work, that's the most important thing, quite similar to like voodoo, there's a lot of misconceptions about voodoo and how people think it's evil, but it really isn't. And it's the same thing with Santeria and using the siete potencias, the 7 elements. A lot of misconceptions in the Afro-Caribbean, because that isn't Kimbanda Afro-Caribbean, consider Afro-Caribbean?
It's Afro-Brazilian.
Afro-Brazilian, okay, Afro-Brazilian. Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
And you're right. And the thing is, these are just, the problem is we tend to judge these things based on our own religious beliefs. So if you're a Christian, oh, that's evil. But you have to judge these things on their own merits and look at what they're doing and how they're either helping or hurting others. Every religion can be used to hurt someone. Every religion.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Died in the name of Jesus Christ than any other cause in the history of the world. Yeah.
A lot of bad things have been done in the name of Christianity, and the fact of the matter is that's not the belief system. That's not what it's supposed to be. No, that's the extremism. That's taking the Bible too far, and it's not even the Bible, because the Bible does not teach anything about hurting other people.
Right,
No,
exactly.
it's ridiculous.
Also, I was going to say that also with a lot of different things, like say Santeria and stuff, there's like anything, there's a good and there's a bad to it. Some people use it for good, some people use it for bad. I've dealt with a lot of cases that involve Santeria, and some of them were not good. They were not doing things for good, but then it puts a taste in everybody's mouth, kind of like, oh, well, that's a voodoo. And you got to know there's good and bad to everything.
Bill, I'll pick you off of that real quick. I've seen wonderful practitioners of Santeria get rid of evil spirits over these so-called famous clergy that have the anointing of God on them, and they've been able to do nothing. And I have a lot of famous priests that don't like me right now, and I don't care.
No, I'll piggyback off that too, then, with the Santeria, because the very first case, and I guess I'll tell one ghost story, and then Layla, you're on deck, so be prepared.
Okay.
But the very first case that I did as a member of a team involved the Santeria religion, and it was a house, and for some reason, so this guy bought this house, he was going to gut it, remodel it, and rent it. All of the wall cavities and floor cavities were full of bones. Not human bones, they were animal bones, but they were cut. And full of people's, like toys and little kids' underwear, socks. I mean, different personal effects from people mixed in with all of these bones. I mean, Ken, you probably know more about that religion than I do, but obviously that was not good intent. I'm not talking like, 100 bones. I'm talking like thousands. They were everywhere in every wall cavity, piles of them, in the floorboards and stuff like that. So, people were burying these bones in the walls and the floor. And it was part of their religion from, whatever they were doing. But what does that signify? Do you know? Because I've never, we were trying to find out the answer, but everyone we asked would be like, you don't want to know, we don't talk about that. Like, that's
well, and for me, and I cannot give you a definitive answer, because each practitioner of whatever religion, they have their own rituals and their own traditions. So I couldn't tell you what that means. I really couldn't, but there's a misconception of, killing animals and all that stuff. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I respect the practice behind it. It could be maybe to ward off evil energy. Who knows? Or maybe there was evil energy that, those bones were used for evil energy to either bring it in, keep it in. Who knows? I can't tell you, because I wasn't there and I don't know what the practitioners were. And I sure
show you video clips of that.
Yeah, and I don't want to surmise, and give a negative interpretation, because, it's all about the intent. Unless you were there, you can't really know.
Yeah. So I guess we'll go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say I gotta run, so I just wanted to thank you guys for having me on. I will see you at the next one.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Thanks.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, and then there's just us.
And then there was 4.
All right.
Layla, what do you got for us?
I'm sorry. What do I have for?
What do
So
you got for us?
before I tell my story, I did want to quickly bring up. I've not had a personal experience with this, but several people. I just think this is important to several people who have had experiences with pets that have passed away. I know that just brings comfort to people to know that's something I personally believe in. I've had people catch pets after they passed away on their cameras, and I mean, you see their pet or they hear them shaking or anything. So I just wanted to bring that up because I know that's a big topic for some people. They wonder if our pets are with us still, and I believe they 100% are.
I know for a fact they are.
Yeah.
I've had my dog haunted me for 20 years.
Yeah.
My cat haunted me for 3 days and then said, I'm done.
I'm done.
Left.
That's a cat.
That's a typical cat, though.
Exactly. Cat for dogs.
That's a typical cat. All right, so I had mine is one of the first experiences I've had on an investigation. I had gone out with my daughter. There's this village up north from here where they've actually, it's pretty fascinating. They've taken several houses and buildings from other places and put it into one village. And so there's volunteers that are in charge of each house. So they had asked us, they'd have activity just to come out there. And one of the volunteers was there with us that night, showing us around. And I go and I'd met three people that are now my dear friends. One of them is a medium. When she first met me, she's like, "Hey, did you know you're an empath? And by the way, you used to be a shaman," which I was like, "Okay, thanks." Didn't think anything of it. So we're going through the houses and doing tours. And one particular house, the gentleman that was helping us was this sweet gentleman. He had one of the houses there. He had been working there for about 2 years. Sweetest guy. All the houses are locked up. He was unlocking it as we would go into it. So we go into one particular house that was his house. And immediately we're in the house and we're downstairs talking, and you can hear the footsteps running up and down upstairs, which is just crazy. If you've never experienced that, it's just something different that you know that there's no one up there, but you're hearing it. But so we had gone upstairs, me and another friend, to go check. And he says, "Come downstairs," the volunteer, Aaron, "come downstairs. I don't want you up there." That's weird. So we come downstairs and we're all sitting in a circle, kind of talking like we are. And I look over and I see Aaron, and it was the craziest thing. He just was draining of color, and he slumps over. And I see him trying to talk, and no one notices but me. And he's pointing at his Bible. So I'm like, "Hey guys, Aaron needs help." My friend who's now a dear friend of mine, just was like, "Hey Layla, you used to be a shaman, help him." I was like, "What?" So my daughter, I happen to have a cross that used to be my grandma's, who has been blessed. So I grabbed it. I just whatever came to me, I did a prayer for him. And it's the craziest thing, because you just see and I have it on video, the color come back to him, and he comes back to life. And we get him out of there, and he's better. And I just think that some people, they're in a location too much, and it feeds off of it. And then he ends up telling us later that night that he actually used to work in oil fields. He was a medic, and he had seen a lot of explosions and deaths, and he was carrying around with him a bullet that was thinking of killing himself with, and that he just used that to help himself. But he said after that night, he quit working there, and he felt better, and he never had to carry that bullet around with him ever. But because we had told him, just please get away from the location. You've been around that too much. But it's just crazy to see that whole, you physically see it take over someone. So it was just crazy to see that happen.
No, I think that's a strong possibility, and you see it happen a lot. The affinity of always going to a certain location over and over and over and over again, I think does wear down on you and can drain you.
Yeah.
Just like I was watching this documentary on Amazon Prime a few days ago about the Conjuring house. Not much evidence, but the fact of the matter is that the investigators at the end of the show, they took certain items home, and they were attacked. Their personal families were attacked. What a surprise! What a surprise! Even in the video, there was a young girl screaming, "Mommy, mommy, I saw this man." And then even in the video, you can hear that the man is talking over. It was just the husband, which was the investigator, the wife, and the two daughters. You can hear another voice. And I think, with this field, you have to be really, really careful. It can be draining. When we go to a location, it's to help. I'm not looking to go to the same place over and over again, see what I can find. I'm not a hunter. You know what I mean? And if that's your cup of tea, that's fine. No disrespect, but just be careful. You know, if you have some issues, if you suffer from depression, from anxiety, and you're not well grounded and you don't know how to protect yourself, you know, there is the possibility that yes, you can be overwhelmed. And
Yeah.
we see it happen all the time.
I mean, even after we got him out of the house, we were talking and he kept just staring at it like it was trying to draw him back in. We kept having to redirect him. Come on, you know, we ended up having to leave, but it's just crazy that obsession, what it can do to people. So you do have to be careful and absolutely 100%, like everyone said, do the cleansing and do the protection whenever you leave a location. It's so important.
Just a few weeks ago,
especially if you're a person who's vulnerable for one reason or another. Either you're empathic and you're very sensitive to other to spirits and so forth, or you're somebody who's got a similar frame of mind as the spirit and they're able to latch on to you.
Yeah.
Can't say, you know, from your story, I couldn't tell you which it was with this gentleman, but you know, those are the things that can happen.
Yeah.
It sounded like depression.
I've
like he was a depressed guy, and
So he'd been very depressed and suicidal. I think that was a big
yeah,
component of
that's a
it.
dangerous combination to be going to a location that's haunted like that.
Yeah.
Something kind of off topic. A few weeks ago, Joe Frank and I, we were with Frankie Frank at the Dark Waters Paracon. And we were out there giving lectures, and there was this young gentleman that came up with his friend. He didn't know we were going to be there. And as he was walking up, I could see something was off with him. He was getting really, really upset looking at me. And I was like, hey, are you okay? And he got a little mean. And I was like, what's going on? And his friend was like, you know, he's not sleeping well. We're seeing these things are happening, blah, blah, blah. You know, so there was definitely a supernatural influence on him. And so I had the kid come up to him. I was like, hey, you know, how are you doing? I went to go shake his hand. He didn't want to shake my hand. I gave him a rosary. And when I gave him the rosary, his hand was burning hot. And he started cursing me out. And his eyes turned white. So I said, Joe Frankie, we might have to do something. So we took this gentleman to a private room. He wanted us to pray for him. We did a minor deliverance. But little did I know that Joe Frankie had a rosary in his hand. I guess your grandpa had taught him he had a rosary in his hand. And he put it on his back. And as soon as he put his hand on his back with the rosary in his hand, the kid just started acting up. He started talking different languages. His eyes turned white. He started foaming. He started getting scratch marks across his forehead. So we did a minor deliverance. And as I was putting holy water, he was getting scratches and he was speaking different languages. So we did the prayer for him. We did the minor deliverance. But I said, you need to keep in contact with us. And I go, but there's some things that you need to get out of your chest. You need to see a psychologist or something. And I go, what's going on? So, you know, apparently, you know, he had some underlying traumatic issues with sexual abuse, drug abuse, and he was delving into all of these different religions and he wanted a quick satisfaction. So he was conjuring up darker energy, you know, now, and, you know, and I tell people, I don't care what you do. I don't care what you practice. It's not my job to judge you. It's my job to love you. But if you're going to do these things, be cognizant of the overall after effects and be in a good state. And he certainly was not in a good state of mind. So
I think, you know, one of those things that everything happens for a reason, that he was there at that place and time to do this.
But we were so drained, and it was like 20 minutes before my lecture, and I was actually giving a lecture on the correlation between demonic possession and mental illness, how one can mimic, blah, blah, blah. It was pretty interesting.
This is kind of a related comment, so I just wanted to
Yes.
post it there. But Layla, too, in your story, I mean, what would have happened to that guy if you guys weren't there?
Yeah,
Has that
exactly.
ever happened to him before? Did he say?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's. Oh,
He'd never had that happen before. He said that's the first time that had happened to him.
What's
I mean, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, like I said, they got him. He quit working there, and he's off on his own, and he's doing better now. He said,
Yeah,
he's this happier, lighter person now.
well, that's good.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm sure you have another. Oh,
No, I'd like.
I was gonna say I love Craig Porter's comments. I like when Craig comes on. I keep on thinking he's part of the foundation.
so yeah, he's saying mental health can impact on energy draw, can be a beacon for some energy. I have a friend who suffers from, I'm assuming, schizophrenia. And if he overthinks, he manifests paranoia, and this creates a cycle. That's how many cases do we get like this?
It's true. It's true, because I'm actually taking a course by Father Chad Rippinger, who's an exorcist for the Archdiocese, and he has a book, the Introduction of Science to Mental Health, and it's an encyclopedia compendium. But in his book, it talks about the immaterial side of psychology, and that's what I'm studying: the immaterial side of psychology, how it correlates, and how there's a lot of supernatural effects, and the part that the actual physical part of psychology cannot take into account. So it's true. And one of the things that Father Chad Ripperger did say was exactly what Craig Porter said. We also have to take into account the immaterial side of psychology, and understand these things as well. But yeah.
I'd say let's bring it in with another ghost story.
All right.
Seems like a good breaking.
I've got thousands, but there are a couple that I'd like to share with you because they're about illustrating why people become ghosts.
Can you tell me one that involves Joe Frankie? I'm just joking.
No,
I'm totally joking.
We need to get you a signed autograph
but
picture to put it behind you.
I'm sorry. We just got to bring.
I was contacted by this woman. Now, I had never tried mediumship at this point in my life. It was the very first time, and it wasn't something. Obviously, it wasn't something I was comfortable with the idea of. But she thought that her son had committed suicide, and she wanted to know if he was okay. And so I agreed to try. I don't know why she thought I was even a psychic. It wasn't something I ever, I ever advertised. And so I was able to contact her son. He, it turned out, had died of an overdose. I didn't know this. And I asked her about it. And yes, he had died of a drug overdose. And then I started talking to her using words that I would never, ever think to use, including like terms of endearment to this woman. And Ken's partner there.
Yeah.
And these were words that the son used to use all the time with his mother. And so she was in tears. And he was assuring both of us that this was an accidental overdose. He hadn't committed suicide, and he wanted his mother to know that he was perfectly okay and that she should let him go and get on with her life. And she was able to do so. She was, which is the hardest thing in the world for a parent to do, to let go of a child. But that one was pretty special to me. Another time, another woman had come to me, and she had gotten involved with this man. And then she kept having these reoccurring dreams of her husband who had died. And she wanted to find out what was going on because she couldn't remember anything. And so I agreed to try to contact her husband. And he came through very quickly and very strongly. And he was very worried about his wife, that this was not a good man that she was getting involved with. He was going to hurt her. He was going to take advantage of her. And I did follow up with her over time. And it turned out, yes, indeed, this man really was a terrible individual. And it was a good thing she did listen to her husband and left him, because he ended up causing a lot of damage to another set of people, and in the past had taken advantage of women in a way that, robbed them and destroyed them. So this was another example of how spirits can come through and keep protecting us even when they're gone. I mean, I've got personal experiences as well.
That's an interesting question. Why do you think? I mean, how do you think that he had the ability and the foresight to know that this guy was a bad guy? I mean, because he was a spirit, so how would he?
He was there. He was watching over his wife the whole time. And when he became aware, when he saw this woman, this new man, this woman in his wife's life, he checked him out and saw his past history and everything. Plus, you have to remember, a ghost doesn't see us, our physical bodies, not really. They see our light, they see our aura. So they have a far greater understanding of us than sometimes we have of ourselves. You know, if they're a cognizant, self-aware spirit, a lot of them are stuck and they're very lost. Those ones, it's far different. I've dealt with people who have been stuck because, you know, they're terrified to pass over. Sorry, I've got this large list that I made of different stories I might share tonight.
That story is very similar to the one that you and I worked on about 2 years ago from Costa Rica. Remember that case where the husband had passed away unexpectedly, and I guess there was no closure, and so the wife was sending us evidence of the things that was happening, and in the video, you can hear audio that says "Perdóname," which means "forgive me." Turns out that in life, the husband really wasn't the best man, and he died unexpectedly, and he didn't have any closure, and so the client kept on getting this activity. He was trying to talk to her, and the conversation last that we had was like, I'm not ready to forgive him. And I go, as long as you don't forgive him, I'm sorry to tell you, but his energy is going to still remain. He's looking for that closure. He's sorry for what he did.
This is the case that was, they were Costa Rican, but they were in, I think, New York or New Jersey?
New Jersey, that's the one. Yes, boss, that's the one.
Okay, I remember.
Yeah, and so the client moved to a different location, and, the activity had stopped, but the husband keeps on coming back. And right now, when I spoke to the client, she goes, I'm just ignoring it right now. I'm not ready to forgive him. And, and that's the unfortunate part is with the spirit side, it's like closure is important. And that's what somebody had mentioned. Closure is highly important, especially to a lot of these spirits. I think maybe that's why we do get a lot of this activity that happens. The spirit is not aware of what's going on, and it's a tragic event. And it's like, oh my gosh, I made some mistakes in life and I kind of want to cross over, but how can you get that forgiveness? So, what do we do in this case, and, we just try to help the spirit cross over and help the client deal with the grievance, but it's a process ultimately. And
I like Nicole's question here.
Yeah.
What if a spirit refuses to cross over and claims that they like being on this plane? I actually have a case in mind that I could talk of about this, but does anybody else want to address it first?
I think, okay, this is something that, and mine will be real quick, but like, this is something Diet, Renee, one of our members, told me, because I had her help me on a case, and it's what she told me is that the spirits do have free will. If they don't want to go, they're not going to go. So a lot of people think that us as paranormal investigators, we can come to your house and kick out whatever's there. But if it doesn't want to leave, if it's a human spirit, it doesn't want to leave, it's not necessarily going to leave. So we're going to have to, she basically said, you're going to have to make some kind of deal with it, because she believed, we believe we know what it is. And, but she, you're going to have to go, like, have a man-to-man talk with the guy and say, hey, try to come up with some kind of terms or reason or rules or
some type of compromise.
Yeah. So
and sometimes it's a matter of therapy and mediation, helping them.
Yeah. Because this particular case, this guy had unfinished business with his daughter, and he was not going to leave until we convinced him to, or he got resolution with her. So, and unfortunately, it was for her. She would have rather had a demon in her house haunting her rather than than this guy. You know, there's reasons for it, blah blah blah. But
Because sometimes the pain is real. You know,
worst case scenario.
the trauma. You know, the trauma of that past partner.
Yeah.
It's like you're already in a living hell. You know, in the physical side, and you're in a very volatile situation. And now this person is physically gone, but now the spiritual is there. It's got to be just as bad or even worse, intensified times 10.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think on a
was in
deeper
the-
place that the free will explains the ghosts that are here with us. You know, that just like you're saying, they have something they want to deal with here, and it's their will to stay here. That's
Yep.
their choice that they get.
I do have a question for you, Jeff. But
Yeah.
I thought it takes 28 days for the ghost to cross over.
Only
Only if you're in a
No,
coffin.
it's on the 28th day you have to take off your shirt and
Sure,
yell
it's-
after you wear the God helmet.
yeah.
That's the key right there. It's
That's
God
the key
helmet.
right there. Yeah, that's
Sure,
what I thought.
Anyway,
Let's not get there.
I could talk about a lot of different cases where spirits didn't want to move on. But I was in a place called the Lady Bowen Bed and Breakfast in New Zealand. This is a very old, old for New Zealand, bed and breakfast. So from the 1850s. And we were doing a public investigation, which is not something we do very often, but this was a very safe location. One of our members actually owns the bed and breakfast. So we knew that this wasn't someplace harmful and that everybody would be safe. And we were using the Estes method in the parlor downstairs first. And a spirit came through and he said he wanted to speak with me. And it seemed that he was a gentleman, I think his name was Long Jim. He was a tall man. And one afternoon, he had an argument with this other man, and he saw the man coming out of a shop. He grabbed a gun, ran out on the street, shot the man in the leg, and the man ran away, sort of, got away. And Long Jim took his own life, probably terrified that he was going to go to jail. And so I tried to help him to pass over, tried to help him understand that everything was fine. He wasn't going to go to hell, that it was okay for him to go. He wasn't ready yet. But then we broke into smaller groups, and I went upstairs with one of the small groups, and they were using another one of these machines. And the same gentleman came through again, saying again he wanted to speak to me. It was like he really wanted to believe that he could pass over and that it would be okay for him. But no matter how much I tried, in this particular case, we weren't able to help him to pass over. It really is a matter of counseling a lot of times. People who commit suicide often are afraid to pass over.
And no, they don't go to hell. I hate that notion. No. You know, people say, oh, you commit suicide. No, that's not true. That's a fallacy. That's a fallacy taught by false prophets, by false people in the pulpit. You know, the Creator, I believe in, is merciful and compassionate. You're not going to go to hell for taking your life. So if you have that feeling, if you were taught like that, don't think like that. That's wrong. That's all I wanted to get off.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you're not going to go to hell, period.
Yeah. No.
People can be lost in the dark, far away from the light of God, but that's a hell of your own making. You're too terrified to get close to the light of God. But I had a case, I've had so many, but I had a case of a gentleman who had committed suicide, again, in Costa Rica. And I had made contact with him. I knew nothing about this house, nothing about anything. As I'm walking down the stairs, I start choking. And I'm like, why am I choking? You know, I don't know the history here. I don't know what's going on. And I get underneath the house to where it would have been like a outside place for them to have breakfast and look out over the city because it was on a mountain. And I was like, this is really getting difficult to breathe here. I feel like I'm being choked. He says, well, there was a man who hung himself right where you're standing. I said, was this man from the United States? And was he ex-military? They said, yeah. How did you know that? I just felt it. And they were using their equipment. And there was me and another woman from Mexico. The spirit didn't want to have anything to do with me. He kept saying, I'm fine. I want to be here. I'm happy to be here. And leave me alone. But he did like this one woman from Mexico. So he was attracted to her. And we were able to leave the rest of the group behind. We went up the stairs. And after about 30 minutes of talking to the spirit, we were able to convince him. We realized he was terrified. He was going to go to hell because he had killed his 2 dogs before killing himself. He didn't want to leave them alone in the world. And we were able to help him to pass over. And the poor woman, she was in tears by the end of this. I mean, she could feel him passing over and just crying her eyes out. It was the sweetest thing. It was so nice to be able to help him, do that. So one of the rules of the foundation is we don't go anywhere unless we have we're there to help. And that could be to help a spirit or a living soul. But we're not just there to sightsee, ever.
I had an experience like that when we met at the Beacon Theater in Virginia a few months ago. I was with Kailulani, and we were in a part where we were just doing our investigation, and we were doing a spirit box session, and all of a sudden I got a really, really bad stomach. I wasn't feeling really good, and a young lady, spirit by the name of Sophia, came through Kailulani. And she was...
Is this Kalinu Howie?
Kalinu Howie, yes. Kalinu Howie. And so the spirit, Sophia, was talking to her, and she had felt so much guilt because, the doctor that was there was doing really horrible things to these women. I mean, they were going to get physical appointments, and he was illegally aborting the fetuses and killing them. And so she had the guilt of going to hell. And so I think maybe I got a really bad stomachache because at that point in time, when she went to the doctor, she was pregnant, and she was stuck in that realm because she was afraid to cross over, because she was called so many bad names. And I actually prayed for her through Kailulani, and I gave her her last rites, and she crossed over. And I tell you what, I never had an experience like that. I was teared up for the rest of the night because I felt that energy. A young woman who was stuck in that plane, who was hurt, who was embarrassed, was waiting for us to come along this whole time, and we were able to help her out.
And Chris, you had an experience there as well that's kind of similar, which, I'm going to plug the foundation here for a second, but we finally got the green light to do this documentary about our experience at the Beacon Theater. But you had a similar experience too in the green room, correct?
Yeah, we had a confrontation with the same doctor. First, a nurse came through, and we were able to help her to pass over. But the doctor was right there trying to attack and intimidate the other people in the room with me. And he even said, so fine, you helped her pass over. What do you do about all the others? And that's when all of these other women came through. And they were saying, we can't pass over. He's got our babies, and he'll send them to hell if we leave him. And we realized that he had been terrorizing them into staying with him. And I can't say that he was feeding off of them, but he was certainly making himself feel powerful that way. And we were able to make contact with the spirits of the babies. And they were coming through and saying, come on, it's okay, come on, to the mothers. And oh my God, the mothers were screaming at the man. They were so angry. They realized that they had been tricked for all this time. And I was with Kalunya Howie Traveler as well at that point. And there were a couple of other psychics in the room as well, and we were using the Estes method. And it was amazing. All of a sudden, we start singing Amazing Grace, all of us together, as the spirits start passing over. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. And the doctor, trying to intimidate us and trying to scream and yell, and I was like, "Yeah, go away. I
When
don't
we
care."
when we got
You're
into that
probably-
room, when we finally went into the room, when you guys were done, there was no energy there. I think the doctor had some type of energy just once because we had the LED light strip going on, and I asked the question. I go, "Are you pissed that Joe Frankie was here?" And it went beep, and it stopped, and it never turned on again ever. And that
I was
was
going
it.
to say Joe had an experience in that same room too, where he
Yeah.
confronted that doctor. And here's another funny story about Joe. And this is all a joke with me and Joe's bromance, but this was hilarious. So we all talk about the Estes method. Have you guys ever seen Joe Frankie do it?
You know,
Well, he puts the
No.
headphones on and listens and asks the questions himself and gives the answers. Like it I was sitting in a dark ass corner just laughing my butt off because he's like, "Are you in here
That's
with me?"
not the way it works, Joe.
He said, "Yeah, he's in here." Like, it was,
well,
it
well,
was hilarious.
I did have one question for Chris and even for the panel on the Estes method, right? Came across a case where we're currently working, and there was an individual who was not even an investigator who went on their first hunt, was using the Estes method, and they got a really horrible attachment. Now, I don't think that was right. I don't think you put inexperienced people to do this Estes method. Inexperienced, untrained. I mean, and that can be a dangerous thing as well. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, I mean, that's very similar to playing with a Ouija board, in my opinion, because you're opening yourself up to communication. I mean, there's a lot. The Ouija board gets a bad rap. It's your intent and you're opening the door is the problem. And when you're doing the Estes method, you're definitely, especially if you close your eyes and take away your other senses, you're definitely opening yourself up.
People have gone crazy doing these deprivation methods.
Yeah.
Sure.
It is scientifically proven that if you go under deprivation for over 7 to 10 minutes, not properly trained, you will go into psychosis.
Yep.
It is the dangerous thing.
Yeah, I think you should limit exactly like what you said. Limit the time frame
Yeah.
you're doing it.
And you should always make sure that you are yourself in a mentally healthy state of mind. If you are having problems, if you're physically having problems, mentally having problems, this is not something you should be messing with ever.
Right.
We have pulled researchers out of the field when we feel that they are not mentally or physically sound.
Yep.
We can't take that risk, ever.
And that goes for watching some of these intake interviews as well. I mean, you really have to be in a, as Joe says, a state of grace. You have to be of sound mind, and you have to be healthy. If you're sick, you shouldn't be watching. I mean, some of them maybe, but some of these darker ones that we get into and watch.
Well, just like with the client that you guys had, right? I was originally part of that case that did the first interview. Then you guys did that interview that Saturday. My stepmother was visiting in town. And I remember there was a point in time, maybe like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my time, that I got really, really sick. And I was driving home. And all of a sudden, I was turning left to go on the light. And I almost hit a woman crossing the street. And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and she goes, "How the hell did I get here?" I don't know. But I felt so nauseous. I felt so sick. And come to find out that when you guys messaged me, you guys were on the interview as I was driving home. I do think that we all are all intertwined and that we can all be affected by these cases that we work. That's my personal belief. I think that once you get involved in a case, and even within the foundation itself, many of us have so many different cases. I mean, shoot, a few weekends ago, bombs just started dropping, energy completely depleted. Yeah. And I think that's because of all the good work that we do. And sometimes, we're reminded that, we are vulnerable and that these things can happen at any moment's notice.
Yep. And that video that you're referring to, and I'm not being dramatic and making this up, absolutely everybody that has watched that has had some kind of encounter. Some are worse than others. I mean, people are like getting sick, throwing up. People are having stuff visit them when they watch it. I mean, Joe Frankie even. So we're not talking like, hypersensitive, dramatic people. We're talking people that have got experience and have done this for a long time. That says, "Hey,
And it's not influence.
here with
It's not influence because a few days later you guys will talk and say, I have experienced this. It's not like you're telling them as I'm feeling this right now. And that's one thing that we never do during an intake interview. We never tell each other how we're feeling or what we're sensing. That's not what we do because we don't want to compromise the integrity of that investigation of the interview. Because if we have a psychic saying this is what I see, what I feel, you've potentially contaminated and you've influenced something that we don't need to, we're not at that point yet.
I've done that myself. I've been in a mood, I'm angry, and then I stop and realize, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't me.
Yep.
And I have to stop and step back and, bring the white light and you step away from it. But sometimes you're not thinking about it. It just kind of, like you said, you look up and you don't know how you got there.
Yeah.
Well, just like a few days ago, Layla, we are working on this active case in Texas, and the client had said some really bad things, nasty things about me, and I was like, I was disgusted, I was hurt, I was upset. I go, you know what? Let's just cancel the case. And I was like, you know what? I had to step back, take 30, 40 minutes to breathe. I spoke to my wife, and we realized, that with these cases, there's always some type of unknown factor or unknown supernatural influence that can affect you. And so we realized that this wasn't coming from the client. This was coming from her state of anxiety and the activity that she was experiencing and the energy that was influencing her. What good are we if we abandon the client? And we did it. We're still working with the client. But but it's given us enough experience to realize, well, this isn't us, because all of us, we were just about ready to quit. All of us.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? No, this client needs us. We can't. And so we're still working it.
And that was the same case I was talking about. I like snapped at my daughter about something, and that's when I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not mad. It's nothing I should be angry about. And I had to step back and realize what was going on.
No, I was upset. I ripped off my collar from my shirt. I got upset. I ripped off my collar. I teared up a shirt, one of my clergy shirts, and I go, oh gosh, it was the force was so overwhelming and it was so emotionally draining that I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, forgive me. Yeah. But we can be affected, and that also affects our psyche. It affects our psychological, state of mind as well. I do believe that, with ghosts and spirits, all of that stuff, we're all intertwined. So, mind, body, and spirit, mind, body, and soul, it's all interlinked for a reason. You can't have one without the other. You can't take care of one and neglect the other. It's highly important.
Right.
Chris, have you ever had?
That's what we say when we deal with cases. It's a holistic approach.
Yeah.
We can't only deal with the spiritual. We've got to deal with the psychological, physical, everything that makes that person vulnerable, as well as, what's actually attacking them. You can't only deal with part of it.
I got freezing. It's got cold all of a sudden.
Chris,
you said it was 33 degrees this morning, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's like 50 here in the Bay Area right now.
Have you ever had a case impact you like that too, to where it's actually like latched onto you as well in a negative way?
Oh, sure. I've been thrown across the room. I've been punched. I've been scratched. I've been burned. I had the gas turn on my stove 3 nights in a row without the flame turning on, filling up the house with gas. I've had the car brakes go out right after I broke a curse on somebody. And the car wouldn't start the same day that we were leaving to go to that case. Oh God, so many things happen to try to intimidate, and it's like, why? Just, it hasn't worked the other 30 times I've tried this. Why do you keep trying? Just cut it out.
But like Layla said, and I've experienced this too, like the first time it happened to me, it actually stuck around for a long time because I didn't recognize it for what it was. This something was influencing me for I'm not saying I was possessed or anything, but like after you do it for so long, you recognize it and you can shut it down pretty quick. Like you said, with your daughter,
keen investigative skills, being a keen and seasoned investigator and researcher, with this case too, I know I told you guys at the beginning of the call that my thermostat went out, but what I didn't tell you is that when my thermostat went out, my garbage disposal broke, the fuses in my house went out, and then my toilet got clogged, And then I got an email from my car note company stating that I missed a payment. And I go, I never did. And I got an email the next day stating, oh, we made a mistake. And then all of a sudden, everything was back to normal. I don't know. Maybe it's not supernatural. These all are things that, I guess when crap hits the fan. But I mean, all of these things exactly at one time after everything is normal. Who knows?
I had the same thing happen. I think I told all you guys, this similar thing. The garbage disposal went out. My dryer like fried out completely. And then like it ended with I sat down to eat dinner and literally the chair that I was sitting in broke.
Oh, geez.
I mean, at that point, you just got to lap it off and kind of shake and keep going.
Yeah.
I had one night, we had arranged an exorcism on a woman with an exorcist I knew down south. Now, I wasn't going to be there because it was too far away from where I was at the time. But I had arranged the whole thing, and then I went to bed, and in the middle of the night, it was like 2:05 in the morning. My TV blares on, my computer turns on by itself playing some advertisement, and I was married at the time, and my wife was like, oh, let's go see what's going on. What's going on? I'm like, just ignore it. Just ignore it. And 2 minutes later, turns off. And I was like, all right, let's go back to sleep. 5 minutes later, blares on again. Oh, fine. So I went out, I unplugged the television, turned off the computer. Next morning, the computer's completely dead, and it took 6 months to get fixed. I was like, you son of a...
And then it started working again randomly, right? Didn't it start working again randomly a few months later?
No, not that one. That's happened on other occasions with my tablet, where I thought, all right, it's finally completely dead, and then all of a sudden it starts working again. I'm like, what the hell? Yeah, that energy manipulation is the simplest thing a spirit can do. I wanted to give a couple of examples of residual hauntings, only because one of them is actually my favorite ghost story ever. Layla, I love your partner.
Thank you.
Yeah, your little
good-looking partner you got.
He keeps moving around.
You're just getting comfortable. But this was back when I was in college, and I was not personally involved. It was just reported to me by somebody I knew well, how at 10 o'clock every single night in her house, they would hear the bedroom door upstairs open. They would hear footsteps come down the stairs. The kitchen door would open. Then they would hear the air popper for the popcorn turn on. They didn't own an air popping popcorn maker. They would hear the popcorn pop. They could even smell it. And then they would hear the kitchen door open again, hear the footsteps go up the stairs, and the bedroom door. It was just a residual haunting of a spirit who had loved that ritual so much that they were repeating it every single night. Whether it was an intelligent haunting or just residual energy, I believe it was just residual energy.
Becky Connor actually has a good experiment that she wants to present to the foundation involving residual energies. That sounds like it fits what she's talking about. It doesn't always have to be people that have passed away. Maybe that was the former owner of the house, and maybe that's what they did every night, and they left their... So it could be people that aren't even passed away yet. They just, that residual energy of their ritual was just left there.
Good vibes.
Really
Exactly.
I've got to get her to present it because it's a great idea.
Well, I tell you what, my wife's going to hate me when I die because there's going to be Twinkie wrappers all over the floor.
Yeah, you're dead, so who cares if they kill you, right?
Right.
She's going to make you pick them up somehow.
Yeah, she'll make me pick them up. She's like, baby, you can your dang Twinkies.
But residual hauntings are interesting to me because you're right. You don't have to be dead.
Yeah.
But when you have tragedy, like a battle, like Gettysburg, for instance, or if you have like a dungeon in an old castle, it can leave an imprint from all that torture that's took place there. And you'll hear the clanking of the chains and the screams and the moans, but it doesn't mean that there's actually some poor spirit still hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
It's just that stone tape theory we talked about, where stone especially seems to absorb energy better and to replay it to people who are sensitive.
Yeah.
What I always find interesting, though, Jeff, this is going back to something you just said. 1 out of 4 people in the world has an out-of-body experience sometime in their life. 1 out of 4 people at some time in their life is basically a ghost. You know, they've left their bodies.
Yeah.
And it amazes me why we're so overwhelmingly afraid of death. You know, when so many of us have personal experience. I've had personal experience with leaving my body. You know, I've lived in far too many places in the world, over 80. And when I was in my last year of high school, the bedroom I was in, my mother lied to me because it was always freezing cold in there. They said, "Oh yeah, when they were laying the foundation for the house, they crushed the heating pipes to the bedroom." Yeah, lie. No. Turns out that the old man that had lived there before we moved in had died, and that was his bedroom. And I had so many experiences in that room. I would hear my name called. Maggots would drop from the ceiling like dozens of them all at once would just come down on threads. I'm like, what the hell? I've never seen anything like that in my life. I had an out-of-body experience in that bed. I walked across the room, went to the bedroom door, and I'm trying to open it, and it won't move. And I turn around and look, and I'm still in bed. All of a sudden, I'm bolt upright. So
that's the disservice a lot of adults do to their kids. They lie, and I mean, if they would have been truthful to you, you probably wouldn't have been as scared or like, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was terrified of anything, especially the dark, as a child, because I could sense things, and I could constantly, my room, whatever room I happened to be in, always would get freezing cold. I was always attracting spirits back then. I was out of control, and my family would just lie about it, trying to protect me. I was like, nope.
May I direct you to our Get Help form?
What was that?
May I direct you to our Get Help form? On
www.warrenlegacyfoundation.com.
Right.
Click the contact us link, go down to the Google form, and please contact us if you need help. Remember, our help is anonymous and for free. And that's why we do these programs. It's to let people know that we're out there. So folks, if you're listening, please share our website, warrenfiles.com, warrenlegacyfoundation.com, same thing. And let people know that we're here to help. You know, we are respectful. I think we're very compassionate and professional, and we're here to help for free.
Well, it's like you said, one of the goals too of the foundation is to educate. And I really feel that every episode, at least the ones that I've been involved in, there's a lot of education happening because there's so much video content out there of real live demon caught on tape, blah, blah, blah. I really feel like, anytime I talk to all of you people, I learn something. Every episode I've done, the last one we did on the reincarnation, I knew nothing.
That was a good one.
That was a very good show. A lot of people sent me private messages saying how great that show was. And, a lot of people do watch the rewatch. So, definitely share it and, have people watch it because there is a lot of education that happens in the show.
And if you're interested in our shows, we have a YouTube channel, The Warren Files on YouTube. There's probably 100 videos now. Lots of great content there. You'll learn an awful lot. And if you have any questions for us, contact us here on Facebook. This
And I
is
think-
the place.
I think
Also,
too-
too, I was
hang
going
on,
to say also.
Real quick, Ken, let me jump in. Chris, this is one of the stories that you talked about earlier with that restaurant that you investigated. We actually have a video of that I think maybe I'll post that on YouTube here in the next few days. So that
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
So because that was, there's some really good video that was done on that. So sorry, Ken.
Yeah.
No, it's we're talking about the support, and we are a research organization, and we do the very best that we can to help our clients, and we treat them all like family. Also, with that being said, we do have a store, Warren Legacy Foundation store, Warren Legacy store. I posted it in the comments earlier. Every proceed, everything that you buy in the store helps the foundation, and it helps us reach clients, and it helps us to deploy teams as well. So, we do have merchandise. The foundation doesn't make a penny off of anything. The only time that the foundation only makes money is if we do private lectures, but everything else is free. We also have a Patreon. Our goal is to inspire and educate the next generation of researchers, so that when none of us are here, this dream, this legacy continues.
Yep. Layla, do you have anything to plug or talk about, or your last thoughts? Because
No, y'all already plugged everything that we could think of.
Yeah,
How do people find us on Patreon, Jeff? Because I have no idea.
Hang on a minute. No, I think just look up the Warren Legacy
Trick question.
Foundation. Yeah, go to Patreon and just search the Warren Legacy Foundation.
Well, back to your
We
original
also
question.
have TikTok, which is now revitalized and
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
doing a great job. I believe that's the Warren Files.
Yeah, it's the Warren Files on TikTok. It's amazing. We're getting numbers. It's a great platform, and so the idea is the more people that we can reach, the more successful we can be. We are not your cookie cutter organization. We're not going to go on there and say, oh look, crikey, there's a demon. No, we're going to teach you. We're going to educate you. We're going to teach you how to protect yourselves, and we're going to teach you how to do a proper investigation methodology, ethics. And hopefully pretty soon we'll be able to teach classes. So
yeah, and it's at Warren Files on TikTok.
yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. And there's going to be, there's some funny bits up there. We can, if we want to wrap the show up with, if everybody's done talking, we can show a good video that's on Patreon right now as a preview.
Yeah, let's
Is
do
it
it.
like a Benny Hill video? Go right ahead.
Chris, this is one of your favorites. Let me get there real quick. So
Oh, it's got to be Joe.
we'll come back. We'll come back and we'll chat for a second after we watch this video. But this is
All right then. So our
Here's a photo here that says the bloodstains on Maurice's t-shirt that Chris McKinnell discovered while working in the greenhouse with Maurice. Photo by Chris Marshall. There was no guy named Chris Marshall there that day.
We should love the way this.
He did have the bloody t-shirt, but we didn't get photos of it, unfortunately.
So do the other Satan's Harvest have your name on it?
Yeah. And this is from two reporters.
We report, you decide. I'm getting his Yeah, I'm getting his commentary on the Satan's Harvest.
It's ridiculous. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was a confrontation with him under possession in the greenhouse. That happened. There were no words. It was just 3 crosses and blood on his back, and they soaked through the t-shirt. And
Joe, hit the mute
I gotta
button,
see if
please.
they at least got one thing right here. Yeah, at least it says that there was no. Wait a minute. There was no mark on his back. And the T-shirt, it was Snow White. Yeah, that was true too.
It wasn't an I Love You Joe Frankie t-shirt? You're gonna be the first one wearing one.
That'll be in the 2022 remake.
You love me.
That'll be in the
I do
remake
love you.
edition of
Yes,
the book.
that's true.
Part
But-
2 is going to be called Anaconda's Harvest.
oh God, help us.
Python Paranormal. Can you make that shirt? Python Paranormal.
Okay, you guys
No,
need to
because
start
you're
writing
not
down these ideas you
Python.
want me to do.
You're an anaconda.
Hulk Hogan.
The Python. Not their words.
The Hogan anaconda. You see that little kid? I saw a video, little kid, he went up to the Hulk Hogan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, what you gonna do when he's 23 pythons come gunning for you? He was like 11 years old. It was cute, it was adorable.
And that is just a small example of some of the comedy that is on Patreon. I like
no
the part,
to run. Bye.
I like the part where Joe Frankie says, it was an I Love You Joe Frankie t-shirt.
you got to have fun in these
Yeah.
things, and that's the biggest thing for me. It's always, I like to make the clients laugh and make them smile. You got to get comfortable with them. If you're always too serious and you can't build a rapport with the client, so I like to joke around. Well, I had a cheesy Hulk Hogan impression there. Come on now.
I mean, you have to. There's nothing negative about laughter. It's always you're ejecting positive. So
Yeah, you have to.
I do the same.
Stay positive.
Yeah. All right. If anybody else has anything to say it now. If not, we're going to wrap this up.
No, I think this is.
I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving.
Oh,
Everyone here
I
and
do.
everyone out there. And I'm looking forward to spending one more episode with you, I think, before Christmas hits. And enjoy your holidays, everyone. Take some time and enjoy it. I know it can be a stressful time of year, but this is also a very special time.
Once you take the focus off stuff,
Yeah.
it changes a lot because there is a lot of pressure for a lot of people to buy stuff for people, and it's frustrating, but that's a whole nother show.
Yeah. A
So
whole other animal.
It's not about the stuff.
right.
You can show you love people in a lot of other ways.
Yep. So go out and do something. Serve meals for a charity or something like that. That's a very good way to put things in perspective. If you have issues in your life, I've done that before, and whatever I've got going on is nothing compared to when you do something like that and you talk to these people and you hear their stories and you're like, man, then I feel like I'm just being a wuss, like that. That's
It humbles
a bigger
you.
problem.
Yeah, and you got to balance yourself, and
It's-
that's one thing I do as a veteran too, working with different veterans organizations.
Yeah.
I'm always involved with other veterans. I do spiritual counseling. I do chaplaincy. So if anybody wants to talk, reach out to me as well.
What's your
Holidays
website?
can be tough. I have my website is fatherkendoctor.com, but you can reach me through the Warren Legacy Foundation. If you want to talk, if you just want some advice, I'm here for you. We all are.
We all
We all are. Yeah.
We all are.
All right. With that being said,
Jeff, I would like to say one thing about Jeff's suggestion about serving at homeless shelters or food banks, soup kitchens, things of that nature. Don't just do it on Christmas Day, please. They need your help year round.
Yep.
Around, yeah.
Be there when not everyone else wants to be there.
Yep.
Do it when the need is real.
we did I guess I'll end this with this real quick story because this was the single best compliment I ever got in my entire life. It was from a little girl. All right, I'm trying to maintain here because this was very touching. I dressed up as Santa Claus and we went to this poor family's house. It was somebody that we kind of knew. It was a case that we were involved in. And, we took, you would not believe the amount of food that we took and gifts and stuff like that because we hit up people that we knew to donate to this family. So, but I dressed as Santa Claus. I thought I was the worst Santa Claus in the world, but I found out later on, and this is making a long story short, that the little girl said that I must be the real Santa Claus because of what we did, in bringing them all this stuff. We told her that, it was early in the day, but it was Santa's first stop, and just really laid on the lie. I mean, that part of it's not good, but I mean, it was just, gosh, to do that for somebody and just, it really, when you can do something like that, it didn't cost me a penny to do it. We donated some food and some gifts, but other than that, like it doesn't, you can really impact people without spending a dime. So even if you're poor yourself, there's the llama hat.
There you go.
Really make a difference.
I tell people two things, and I kind of live by this. First is be kind, and second, we are all people in process. That's it.
All right, guys, we will
All right.
catch you in 2 weeks.